It's so good to have you here on the Rich Martin podcast. And today I get to speak with some incredible friends of mine, Ben and Beck Donovan, who are based in Manchester, the UK. And they very kindly agreed to chat to me all about their journey of planting a church in Manchester. And their church plant followed many of the rules and many of the kind of systems of planting a church. But they talk openly and honestly with great kind of thoughts and thinking around it of how it just did not work. And they cry, I cry on here, we go into the details of it, they kind of bare their souls. And we did this not to heap embarrassment or shame, because they definitely are not living there. And I think as you listen to it, you'll realize it's not an embarrassment or shame, but they did it because often we only ever hear of the hugely successful things that happen in the kingdom, and that becomes the benchmark. But this was done out of a place of, wouldn't it be useful for other people to hear about when something doesn't always go right? And God still gets the glory, and he gets the glory because they are here, they're healthy, their family are healthy, and God's doing a great work with them. And they unpack and explain all of that. And so the heart behind this from both Ben and Beck and myself is one to be able to say, look, not everything always goes to plan. And when it doesn't, God is still very much in the mix of it. And so let's listen to their story, let's unpack their journey, and I think you'll enjoy it. I certainly got a lot from listening to them and learning as well. So Beck and Ben Donovan. So it's so good to be here with Ben and Beck Donovan, who have been friends for a number of years. And they're the type of friends that we're not round at each other's house every single week. But when we bump in, I always feel like I can just click into gear with you guys. And I'm really excited to talk to you guys today. And it's something we've been chatting behind the scenes about your journey of planting a church. And I've been a spectator, as in I wasn't part of the journey, but I was able to watch it. And it's not the normal journey, because the normal journey that we hear about of church planting is, you know, we picked a city, put a pin in a map, and this city's amazing. And then we've gathered all these people, and this big finance man came, and we gathered 200 grand before we went, and we put a stake in the ground. And you know, week one, 800 turned up. Week two, it dropped to 6. Wasn't that a difficult week? And and then we built from a ground up from there. And now we stood with a church of 1,000, and we're humbly so grateful for what God's done. And those stories are normally what you hear, and then you think, well, I want to plant a church. And your story is slightly different. And so I'd love you just to introduce who you guys are to anyone who's listening, and then unfold and unpack your journey. And so go for it, guys.
Yeah, I'm Ben, and this is Beck, as you said.
Hello.
Yeah, we live in Manchester. We moved here in 2014, so what's that, 7 years ago, to start a church. Beck grew up, I don't want to speak for you, but you go on, do your backstory.
Oh, I'll do my backstory. I was born in Australia, but my parents both kind of became Christians independently of each other, and got, they went straight into ministry training school.
Wow.
And so they did the whole pin in a map thing to an extent, or that's what they were asked to do. And my dad is Scottish. He'd immigrated. So they felt called back to Scotland to plant a church. So that's what they did. So I grew up 7 years in Scotland, as my dad refers to them as 7 skinny years. And then we moved down to the south of England because my dad took on a role running a charity. He became a director, and so he's a missionary, so he was in and out of the Ukraine and Bulgaria and that sort of thing. And so we grew up sort of in the south of England, really, which is where I met.
Where we met, yeah. So I didn't grow up as a Christian. I wasn't in church or anything, and I met Beck at I met Beck at school. I remember first time I met her was in the science lab. Across the room. She just joined
over a Bunsen burner, was it, guys?
It was a Bunsen burner, I'll tell you that much right now. Usually at this moment in a preach, I'll be like, I looked across the room and I was like, hubba, hubba, ding, ding. Look at the
legs.
Holy Spirit hovering over that thing. Yeah. So I wasn't a Christian, though. She used this method. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called Flirt to Convert.
Yeah, lovely.
And so she invited me to church, and the rest is history. So, yeah, I was 16 when I became a Christian, and we were 17 when we became youth pastors. and pretty much have been involved in, or heavily involved in church ever since then.
Wow.
We, at the age of, or I'm trying to do the maths now, but 24, 25, 2012, we were planning to go and spend a year in Australia to do some like ministry training kind of stuff, and then that all got kind of brought forward because a good friend of ours was a youth pastor of a church in Sydney, in Australia, and he actually committed suicide, which is like obviously a massive tragedy, and left youth ministry there sort of in not disarray, but a lot of challenge. And so we were kind of parachuted in to take on that youth ministry and try and sort of help them get through that season. So what was meant to be sort of a shorter time ended up being nearly 2 years in Australia.
Right.
And then then came back with the plans to start a church in Manchester in the UK, and did that.
And so you were in Australia, felt, obviously you were, I don't know if you call Australia home, Beck, or if you thought the UK's home, but you were back in one of your homes. And
He doesn't let me call it home.
Okay.
She's got a British passport.
All right, there we go. So, and so you're over there, and did you sense that God was saying Manchester is where you need to plant a church?
I felt like I'd heard from God before we went to Australia, which is a challenging thing because to go into a church and love that church, love them, give yourself to that season, knowing that you felt in your heart that there was, always a mission to come back to. But I felt like for a long time, I remember the time that I felt most confident about God speaking to me must have been around 2009, 2010, about starting a church in the north of England, because the network that we were involved in of churches, they didn't really have any churches in the north. And I suppose I've always been someone that's like wanted to break new ground or do new things or do something that's not been done before. And so, that really kind of pulled on my heartstrings. And then, over the next couple of years, just sort of narrowing it down to sort of Manchester, felt like there was a few God moments in that. And then, we kind of had pretty much decided before we went to Australia. Yeah.
Wow. And so, unpack, you then come travel back from Australia, and what's the journey, your church planting journey up until the point of, establishing it in the first few months? What did that look like?
Well, we moved. We spent a couple of months back in our hometown, just I suppose getting ready, and then
Living in my parents' dining room.
Yeah,
with our 2-year-old
child.
Oh wow!
And then we moved to Manchester March 2014. We weren't in too much of a rush. I think obviously we'll talk about it a bit, but we were kind of very much following that whole the ARC kind of model in terms of pre-launch, build up, prior to launching. And I think a few people in our sort of circle maybe wanted us just to get us going with Sundays, just get launched kind of thing, but we wanted to try and sort of take it slow, build up, which is what we did. And then we started some pre-launch stuff September 2014, and then launched officially on the 1st of February 2015.
And did you bring any people with you for that? Did anyone travel with you from Australia? Any friends from down south come and help you build? Yeah,
I mean, when I look back, I think how blessed we were that we got to do what we did with some of our best friends in the world. So we had, a couple from Australia who'd been in our youth ministry that we'd kind of gone into support in Sydney. They felt God tell them to come, so they came, and that drew a few more Aussies over as well. But then also we had, I'm trying to think how many it was, but quite a large proportion of our original team from our youth team when we were youth pastors for my parents in their church. And some of those are our absolute best friends, still are. And they all moved up and made a home in Manchester gradually. The Aussies arrived in bits, and then, they came up, found jobs, got, places to live, sorted all that stuff out. So we actually we were talking about it the other day, that we actually had just such great people. We had a great team. There was no doubt about it. We had a really great team. We were really blessed.
Wow. And that you've got a great, strong team. Financially, was it on the wire, or were you actually okay? You had a good start financially.
I think it depends what you would call a good start. We had, we were certainly supported, but I think we came out of a smaller network of churches. It wasn't a network that was going to just bankroll church plants, So the history of it was, here's your guitar, here's your overhead projector, go out and, start with nothing kind of thing. And thankfully that had changed to an extent when when we were going out, but there's obviously only so much they can do within their, their capacity to do it. And so, we had some things, we had a bit of backing behind us in terms of a few bits of equipment to get started.
Okay, great.
Probably enough to pay for like the hire of a venue for probably the first 12 months.
Wow.
But beyond that, in terms of like a salary or sort of ongoing expenses beyond that, there wasn't anything else. So there was something there, which we were thankful for, but certainly not like the full, a full year's budget for staffing and venue and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And so you guys did you start in your living room, or you got a venue, or was it a big start? Was it, far and wide people came to support you for the first week? What did that look like?
We started in our lounge room.
Yeah. We started doing like pre-launch stuff in our lounge.
Training and we would meet every Sunday. We would have lunch together. It was such a beautiful time. Like some of my favorite memories are just the time that we spent with those people at the beginning, because it was like the anticipation, the excitement, the passion,
it's fun, like we've always done team as like a family kind of thing. We've always loved building team by being around people, and it was real special times for sure. But we recognised, we didn't go to Manchester to start like a house group. We wanted to impact people's lives and make a difference in the city, and so we then found like a bar, because we were very conscious that our whole team was young adults, and we're super passionate about that young adult demographic, and so we knew it was going to be a young adult heavy church, and so we felt like we would lean into that a bit, and we were really sort of wanting to be around where the unis were. And so we found a bar right on Oxford Road, which is like right down where we found this bar literally opposite the main uni campus.
Oh, wow.
And started doing like monthly kind of, preview services, as ARC would call them, going there. So that was our first real sort of foray into public meetings, which was a bit nerve-wracking.
And am I right in thinking that you guys were full-time on this?
I was working, wasn't I? Still, I had a part-time job because of childcare and whatever. So Josh was at nursery, sort of part-time, and so those days I would work. But you? Yeah,
I think at that point I was. It was one of those things where like there was a bit of money there. Like our rent was paid on a house, I think for 6 months or something like that. So it was like, okay, well, there's a bit there, and we got a bit of time, but at the same time, there's not much runway. So I'm sort of trying to find ways to make money on the side of doing this. So
Brilliant. You were tent making, as we would now call it, but no one's ever made a tent in their life, but you were doing something to hustle, some side hustles. So you launched the church then. So after pre-meeting, you actually do the full launch. Can you give me stats around what you were roughly at first few months, what that looked like?
I can't actually remember exactly on the first week, but I remember being hugely disappointed. Because obviously all of we got ourselves hyped up a bit, but I think the first week we had maybe 40 people.
Yeah.
I think around that. And then it kind of, as it does, the next few weeks, it kind of just sort of petered out a little bit, and we probably sort of settled in around 30 people. And just sort of went from there. Yeah.
So talk to me about your disappointment. So week one, you're disappointed. What's that about? And I'm guessing Beck had to pick up the pieces as mopey Ben stropped around the house for a few hours.
Oh, how accurate! No,
story of your life.
I guess the context that people might need is that Ben here is a huge he's a big thinker. Like he is a visionary. Like I don't know if you like being described like that, but I can see that, and other people can see that in him. So he's notoriously hard on himself when things don't, literally like blow the lid off of what his expectations were. because you're saying that, and I'm like, oh, but do you remember that? So we had like a guy walk in who'd been like on just watching like God TV and listening to Christian music, but he'd never walked into a church because he was really intimidated by the idea of doing that. But he thought, because we were a new church plant, I think he saw a Facebook advert or something, because we were new and no one was going to know each other. He showed up, and he was literally with us till the very last. He was with us the entire time, and he was a solid, faithful, like, servant of the house. It was amazing. And we had a few other people that came that Sunday that were there on the last Sunday, you know, like there were a lot of instances of that. Like I tend to be more of like but the good thing was, you know, like I'm a silver lining person. So I think which I think is frustrating for you sometimes, because you're like, no, but it wasn't right, or it wasn't great, or, you know.
Yeah.
It's a good balance.
A good team. Yeah, I was about to say, you sound like a great team. And so I don't want to, I mean, we could go all over, but I do want you to speed through. Could you just give us a synopsis of the next few years? And then I would love to go back over them and really tuck into what your learns are and what your kind of thinking would be for people who are starting out, or how they could learn from your journey. Because I said off air, what I love about you guys is we're not talking to some bitter, some hugely down in the dumps couple. You know, there's a whole story of what God's doing, and people thinking, where's this going? Well, you know, tell us what happened and where it went.
Sure, yeah. I mean, the first couple of years, they had, great moments of joy, like Beck said, and there are things that we loved so much, and we saw some great things, and, you know, but when I look back, I do remember just the heart. It's hard not to just remember the difficult aspects of it. So, yeah, I mean, for the first couple of years, we didn't see any growth. Like, we just kind of trundled along, you know, like a couple of times we pushed up maybe towards 50 on a Sunday, and you know, and then kind of hovered around there, and we were just conscious of, we were in a venue. It was called the Deaf Institute in Manchester, which is quite a well-known venue, but it's like a gigging venue, you know, like a bar come gig venue. So it's very young adult, right? There's families weren't going to come and bring their kids. Like, we had some families come and love it, but there's just, their kids were meeting in like a downstairs kind of dingy bar area, you know. It's like, right. It's cool for young adults, and it was a great draw to invite people to for that. But because of that, we realized that this, you know, financially it wasn't going to be sustainable unless we, you know, brought some, because young adults, as you know, like, they're so transient. And so we had so many people come and then go and move to another city, and it was like a merry-go-round, you know. And so we thought we need to find a venue where this is going to sort of appeal to families a bit more. We'd been using this like church hall for like music practices and stuff like that, and we kind of got to the point where we found it so hard to find a venue in Manchester. And looking back, maybe that's because our standards were too high. We were trying to find something that was too, you know, great on a production level, trying to be too, you know, cool as a church. I don't know, but we eventually kind of settled for doing like Sunday afternoon services in this church hall. Like, I think partly because it was super cheap, and we didn't have the budget, and we found it like quite a weight to carry that, and I'd rather that weight was being put into, you know, people and trying to grow people rather than trying to find money each month, you know. And so we went to this cheaper venue, but you know, in hindsight, I think that was not a great move, because it was not a great atmosphere in the church. It was, we put everything we could into making it a more welcoming environment, but it just felt small, you know, just had the feeling of small church. We get affected people's mindsets, and you know, we got to the point probably a year into that journey where we're like, okay, we need to do something, and we just went all out on finding a new venue. We were like, let's because one of the things we sort of stuck to for so long is we wanted to be central. We had a heart to be a central church, reaching the whole of Manchester, impacting, etc. But I was like, at that point, let's let go of that and, you know, look a bit wider, and because we need to do something to try and resurrect this kind of journey. And so then we contacted a bunch of people, and we started looking at like schools, and we found a few that were open to having us. And then there's one in particular that we then eventually moved to, and we threw everything into it, and
we did a whole relaunch, rebrand,
a massive massive relaunch. Kind of got in touch with people and kind of got some financial support to really relaunch it, and thinking that we were going into an area where it was a lot more residential, there'd be a lot more families.
Right.
Let's really kind of see this as like phase 2 and throw everything into it. But yeah, it didn't quite go as planned. Like the first Sunday of this new venue, which would have been like September 2018, 2018, September 2018. Having thrown everything into it, like we literally did a bunch of leaflets, we did advertising, we invited
stuff all out in the community, trying to have touch points, to show that we were wanting to invest in the area, and
and did obviously a massive campaign with our team to be praying, to be believing, to be inviting, all that kind of stuff. And on the launch Sunday of this new venue, like we literally didn't have one single like new person show up. And and to me that was like, I don't think I ever recovered from that,
Right.
And so then like we got to November, which now looking back at it seems like a really short time. We were in November and had dinner with some of our mentors, some people that actually kind of moved and helped us with the start of the church, but at this point had moved back to where they were originally from. Because it was only meant to be a sort of temporary season. Everything was good, and there was still
great,
still great relationship, etc. And we kind of had dinner with them and explained it, and we kind of came to the point where we're like, we need to find God in this. We need to, either make a decision that come hell or high water, we're continuing with this, or, maybe it's going to be time to look at other options. And
I think we were surprised at their reaction, because they had planted a church years and years ago with a lot of budget, huge budget in, was it London, central London? And it hadn't worked out. And so I think, but they were some of our, like, they'd known me since I was a child, and they'd been a big part of my life. And for them to go, it's okay.
Right.
Like, if you want to stop, it's okay. And we were like,
right.
Because I think we talked about it, but we'd never vocalized that as an option.
Well, I think we'd always felt like it just wasn't an option, you just, especially kind of the background of the network of churches we were in. It's like you just keep going. Doesn't matter if there's two people, nobody shows up. You just keep going, and be faithful, and so for us to then even have the conversation of like, what if this doesn't work, and what if we don't continue with this? It was because it was everything, like maybe not for better, but everything I'd ever thought we would do. I thought, this is the end road. This is where all roads lead to starting this church, and this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
Right.
And all of a sudden, we're having these discussions. We used
to talk about it when we were 16, didn't we? We used to sit, we would go out on dates and stuff, and we would sit on the beach and we would talk about our church, like planting our church and what it was going to look like. And
so to even have the conversations was heartbreaking.
I bet.
And we spent, like we were just saying about the other day, that we drove to my cousin's wedding, and it was on a Saturday, and we were still, 4 years in proper church plant mode, like trying never to miss a Sunday.
We couldn't not be there. There was just no way that we couldn't not be there.
And maybe that's part of the challenge, right? Or the issue, or mistakes, whatever. But we were driving back on that Saturday night, sort of dreading, church the next day. At work time, and just talking. And we said the other day, we literally spent there and back the whole way. All we talked about was what we're going to do, and what would it look like if we stopped doing church, and the emotions involved in that, and the team, the people, the consequences. And we just kind of prayed. This was, I think, 1st of December.
Yeah, it was.
But we'd only just relaunched like 3 months prior, and it was heartbreaking in the sense that because we'd invested so much in this. However, it was such a hard thing to take that all we'd done resulted in basically nothing. I kind of felt like the reason we wanted to make a decision was because we either need to come back. You know what it's like in church life. January is like, man, you come full of vision, and it's like new year, get fired up. It's like we could not come back still in this valley of indecision. We had to either come back committed to this no matter what, and see it through, or we make the decision to finish before Christmas, which was gut-wrenching, and that's what we spent the whole time talking about on the journey. And then the next day, I think it was like we'd prayed like, God, show us, do something. We
got in at midnight the night on the Saturday night, put the kids to bed, and we got ready for bed, got into bed. We just lay there, we just held hands and prayed, and we were just like, God, do something, or but we don't feel like, like you saying that we needed to come back with vision and stuff, but I felt like we had given everything. So
yeah, and then it was just a bit of a rubbish Sunday.
It was, yeah.
So sorry, was that
not show up that we were relying on and stuff? Like someone was, our main worship leader was sick and couldn't make it, so I had to not do kids' church and lead worship on my own with the keyboard. And like, when you're just like, where do we go from here? Like, what do we do?
It was everything we didn't want it to be, right? We wanted to start with that bigger church mindset of like, we're not going to do everything. We're going to build a team, a power team, and and so looking around, it's like, this is not what we dreamed of, and not that it's all about us, but we also were considering the other people involved and their futures, and they were sacrificing so much to stay committed and faithful to us, which was commendable, but we were thinking about their future as well. And I think, I can't remember exactly, but I think we came home that Sunday and we were pretty much like, I remember we got in the car and we just both went, I think that's it, isn't it? Like final nail in the coffin kind of thing. And
I can feel it now. And so, I mean, there's so much in this, but so how do you then let a church know? How do you let your family know, your friends in the church who've been in it knee deep? What, was that the week after? Was that, how did that happen?
I can't remember all of it, to be honest. It was, mate, I thought it'd be fine.
Oh no, but I want to cry.
Like, it was probably that was probably the hardest week of my life, I think. But yeah, we just started to, I think, speak to the people that were closest to us.
The court team we met with, I think that Sunday night, did we?
Yeah. I think the Sunday that we kind of decided, we said, can we, the people that were closest to us and part of that core team, said, can we, meet up tonight? And we just talked to them about it that night, and then started to talk to the other people outside the church that were involved in the journey. Obviously, like, we didn't want to just be like, we made this decision, but it was one of those, ones that I'm frustrated if someone comes to me now and says, oh, I'm going to do this, and what do you think? And I'm like, well, are you asking for advice, or have you already made the decision?
That's right.
It's one of those ones where it's like, we've kind of made it, like,
And we had talked to people, though. I feel like we didn't come to that decision.
No, of course,
without talking to people that were experienced, that had been through hard things and had tried all sorts of different things. And
I remember speaking to Ross, and he, one of our mentors, and he said to me, like, have you, like, in your gut, like, what's your feeling? And I said, my gut feeling is it's time to stop. And he says, that's all the answer you need, because we prayed about it so much and been on the journey for so long. And we started to tell people, and then started to tell people in the church. And that's what I think, that process is what showed me that we'd made the right decision, because it was super frustrating, because all I wanted for them to do was to, like, be angry at me.
Right.
Every single one of them was so good about it,
Wow.
So gracious.
So gracious, and so thankful for the journey. And I must have done maybe 15, 20 like one-to-one catch-ups that week with the team. And
it's emotionally exhausting.
I bet.
just one by one, I remember one of the younger guys he was leaving anyway. He'd been with us the whole time he'd been at uni, and he was going back to where he was from,
right?
In a matter of months. But we met up in this coffee shop, Anchor Coffee House in Manchester,
right?
And we just sat across the table, just both crying. He started, and when I told him, he just started crying, and I'd not really seen that from him much before, and then I just neither of us could talk for like 5 minutes, and it's lots of those kind of conversations that we had built such strong relationships that I think people knew where we were coming from and understood and had seen us, kind of do everything we felt we could and heard our frustrations and literally every single one of them was so understanding and so graceful, and which was annoying because I wanted them to get angry at me so I could get angry at them and just shout at each other. It was also prayerful and Christian.
Yeah. I mean,
we couldn't have asked for a better response. And I think the more conversations we had, the more peace I had about the decision we'd made. And I remember when I rang my parents, because my parents are pastors, and they had planted a church in Scotland in a really tough area, and they'd been through it. And I guess I was worried about disappointing them. I felt like I'm ringing them to tell them that the thing that they were so proud to release us to do from the church, we're sending them out, and to have to call them and be like, yeah, we're done.
I think the conversation with your dad was the hardest one for me because we wanted to make him proud, and he's definitely have that like kind of, they planted churches and just stuck it out and never gave up, and and I always sensed that there would be disappointment there, and I think there was, and that's understandable. But I think
that was more for us.
Yeah, it's never, and they've been so amazing and have always been so supportive and accepting, and But I could just tell, when I was talking to him,
right,
I could tell that he was disappointed, and then I felt that, and and that was a very, very tough conversation, but.
And so it's like, you're describing it and I can hear the grief. It's grief over a dream and grief over letting go, really. And so what did you do? I'm aware that the ending is not what you've just described. The ending is a whole lot more fruitful and a whole lot more healthy of where you guys are at now. But how did you navigate that next 12, 18 months of essentially, uncoupling from that journey and letting God do something new in you?
Yeah, good question.
The conversation I had with my mum when I told her, she said, we talked about it, and she said, okay, well, I've got 3 questions for you. And I'm like, oh, great, here we go. Did you pray hard enough? Did you fast? Did you, that's
right,
and she said, are you okay? And I was like, yeah. She's like, is your marriage okay? Kids okay? And I'm like, yeah, we're all good. We're fine. She went, and you still love Jesus? And I said, yeah, of course. And she was like, well, that's all I care about.
Oh, how great.
And I just felt like this release of like, there's more beyond this. What we're feeling right now, there is life beyond this. And I think her saying that to me was like, oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
So then I think to walk through the next sort of 12 months, walking in, so we walked into a new church on the first service in January. So we closed church in December. We walked into a new church first week they were back in January.
Sorry, just to pause there. That is mind-blowing to me. The last place I'd want to be after going through what you guys have been, I would be saying to my family, I think we'll just call it a day for a few months and lay low. I mean, why? Why walk into a new church?
Well, I think we were fortunate in that we go to Audacious Church, and we'd known, like I've known Glyn and like Stuart Keir and Paul Reed and a bunch of the leaders there for over 10 years now, and so I think that we were lucky in that we'd had those existing relationships. To walk into a brand new church where we didn't know anyone,
Yeah, that would have been hard.
I think that would have been harder for us. But I think the thing that really made an impact for me was like, because we spoke to them, we saw them, but not loads. Like even though we're in the same city, you kind of just get on doing your thing. But the first person to reach out to me, I posted about how we were bringing that season to a close, and Stuart Keir, who I've always been pretty close to, but hadn't spoken to much in the last those previous 4 years, right. Like I say, just because we were busy. But he was literally the first, but he messaged me straight away. He says, let's chat, what's going on, how can we help, kind of thing. And we kind of had coffee, and I kind of unloaded a bit and basically just told him what's going on, and they were just super gracious, and they kind of said, just come along, and be around people and that kind of thing. And they pastored us, so, which I think is what we needed.
Right.
And so I think if we hadn't have engaged in community, I don't know how it would have gone. I think we've definitely found it hard and continue to. It's certainly not like I thought I was kind of getting past it, but here I am, getting emotional.
No, but I wonder, whether you'll carry it for the rest of your life, because it is a pain point, and maybe the pain isn't to move through it and to move on from it, but Jacob walked with a limp. Because when I hear your story, I don't think failure. I hear your story and think, I can see God in all of it, and I can see. I don't like the glossy Hollywood version of church planting, or pull this lever, press this button, and you're just going to get a crowd. And that's why I was keen to chat to you on these fronts. And the fact you've walked into a church, and is it 3 years on now from that journey?
Just over 2.
Yeah, just over 2.
Just over 2, and so I want to go back and look at what, maybe some learns or some things hindsight learns that you would love to unpack, but just explain now where you guys are at in terms of, 2 years on, you're in Audacious Church. What does life look like now for Ben and Beck? Are you worrying about getting money for the church building? Are you, where are you guys at in terms of just life?
No, we're not worrying about money for church building, that's for sure. More for our own building, our own house. But no, we.
Come in! Is that an Amazon delivery? I love the reality of where we're currently at now. It's going to be something Amazon related, I'm sure.
Probably. Hopefully, something exciting.
But yeah, where are you guys at?
So. Kind of probably 2 years before we finished up with church, maybe a little bit before that, I started on the journey of running my own business, and to try, and obviously the initial goal was to try and create that sort of time to be able to do what I wanted with my time. I didn't want to have to go and get a job and then only have so much time to do the things I was passionate about, like, building church, being with people. And so I started my own business, and by the time that we'd finished up with the church, it had gotten to the point where that could support us. So we just my initial thing was like, let's just spend the next 6 to 12 months almost recovering that, because I think because there'd been a divergence of focus for so long, it was hard, and that's probably part of the story, in all honesty, is hard to build both of those things at the same time, and the business had probably suffered because of that, and we were trying to support the church and throwing everything into the church, so we were in a spot where we're like, okay, we really need to sort of knuckle down on the business and try and sort of get back on track with that. So that was the first sort of 6 to 12 months, and then still doing that to this day. And then we started to get a little bit more involved in church. We probably resisted it for as long as we could, 6 months at least. And then the young adults ministry in our church was in a sort of quite a transitionary time. So Paul Reed, who was leading at the time, asked us to kind of come in and be part of the team just to help out a bit, which we did for probably about a year in total in the end. And then in the team asked us to take on the young adults ministry in around August last year, July last year, which we've done. Yeah, so we're now doing that. Been doing that for a few months. So.
And it's a great story of flourishment. I watched one of your preachers of the week. It was amazing. Ben's a great communicator. I've also tracked your business, which is brandbuilderuni.com or .org, or what have you got? I don't know what's at the end.
Yeah.
Brandbuilderuni.com, which is all about, you helping people do Amazon fulfillment and creating products and putting it out on, I guess, other channels as well. Mm-hmm. And you guys working together as a team. I think, Becky, from what I can tell, you design a lot of the things and make a lot of that stuff happen. Yeah. And you can just see there's great fruit and flourishment there. And I think, being, not heavily involved at all in your journey, but just being able to watch as a friend in ministry and to see that you didn't go, it doesn't matter if people, when I say go down, that you didn't just go off grid and never to be seen ever again, is that you still had to push through, I guess, difficult weeks and difficult months where you're thinking, what went on? And I think without going hugely into what went on, I would love to know from your kind of like 2 years on, and it's not what would you do different, because I don't know if that's a great question, but more like, what are the learns, or what would you love to say to people who maybe are at the start of that journey and they've got people in their house already and they're on a carpet and they're about to look at venues? What would you say? You know what, it would be if we could give some advice, because I think, by the way, you're perfectly suited to give advice, not from a point of it not working, but from a point of we've been in the trenches and we know what it's like. What would you say was some of the learns or some of the things you'd love to throw to people?
Don't do it.
And that's the podcast. Thank you so much, guys, for being with us.
I'm serious though. Like, don't, unless you have to do it, don't do it. Because I think that's something, I think Phil Pringle said it, once, and I remember hearing that when I was young and feeling a bit like, oh, blimey. But it's true, like church planting is it's no joke, it's not just some, and I'll always remember, and it's something I've said so many times, that Beck's dad, Rob, our old pastor, he always talked about this analogy of, it looks so easy until you do it, and that seems a bit sort of twee. But the kind of the illustration is of like a truck that's going along a motorway, huge 18-wheeler truck, and a cyclist that's parked up behind the truck, just in its slipstream, cycling along, thinking, "Oh, this is easy! Like riding along this motorway is so easy," and then it, kind of comes out from behind the truck, and all of a sudden, bam, there's this headwind, and he would always talk about that. Is like, wait, it looks so easy from afar, and you think, one day when I'm leading it, I'm going to do it like this, and everybody's going to love me because I'm going to lead it so well. And that all may be true, but what you don't realize is that you're also stepping out into a lot of opposition. You're stepping out into, and that's not meant to like put fear into anyone, or you should be afraid and never step out. That's not the heart of it. It's just is you've got to be prepared that this isn't a walk in the park. This isn't just gather some people, preach a message, and read some leadership books and meet with people once a month and give them 5 principles to lead better, and this is going to go well. Like, the weight of this is something that I probably never came to terms with.
Right.
The weight of leading a church from scratch, in a new city. The challenge with us, I think you asked the question about, people coming to support, etc. Because we were so far away from any other churches that were in our kind of, supporting network, that it wasn't like we're just about to do a Sheffield campus with Audacious, right? And we will send a ton of people. It's an hour's drive, so we can drive over, support it, get it going. Whereas we were like completely out in the middle of nowhere in terms of our network, and so it felt lonely at times. It felt like there was this big weight, and unless you know that God has called you to do something like that, you need to have a word from God that you can come back to. You need to have something that you can anchor your faith in when that kind of stuff does hit, because that's the reality of it, right? You're stepping out, and what looks easy from behind the slipstream of a big vehicle actually becomes a lot different when you step out.
It's a great analogy. It's an absolutely brilliant analogy. What about yourself, Beck?
I think, like I said before, my whole approach to life tends to be, there's a bigger plan that I don't understand how all these things work together.
Right.
But God does, and I trust that. That's not always easy, and I don't always do it very well. But I think for me, like you're talking about business and stuff, like I've always wanted to design. I've always wanted to do creative stuff, but I've always put all of that stuff on the back burner because I always thought church first. always church
Right,
first, you know,
right.
like, so I chose studies at college that meant I wasn't going to have to do Sunday rehearsals. I chose things that I always made sure that I chose things that would not affect youth on a Friday night and church on a Sunday. And that was has been my entire life experience. And I think something that freed me and something that God's taught me through this whole thing is that now, because of the decision we made with church, and, you know, Ben has had a gift for business forever. And I think seeing him and what he's created in the wake of of the church and what happened, the community that he's built with Brand Builder University is incredible. Like the camaraderie and the encouragement and the spirit behind it is just, they're all there for each other. And so that gift and that thing that God puts inside of you, I think all too often back in the day, the second anyone caught sight of that, it was like, you need to plant church.
Right.
You know, like it was like the funnel that every good leader goes through is you serve in kids' church, then you serve in youth, and you serve in young adults, and then you're ready to be a pastor, and you go through the funnel. And I know it's not that simple, and I know it's not intentional like that, but that's how it plays out often. And I think you come out that funnel like, oh, well, the next promotion, the next level up from here is church pastor. But I think the thing that, and I believe that's what I thought, that's how I thought it worked, that's how I thought it would go. But the thing that God has done for me through all of this is show me that there are multiple ways to have an impact. There are multiple ways to use your gift of leadership, like Ben's doing with Brand Builder University.
Right.
That gifting is still there, and there's still a pastoral gifting. There's still, you know, there was still an anointing to preach, as you said. You've heard him preach. He's awesome. Like, you know, there's all these giftings, but the thing that I love about the situation we're in now is that we've come under Audacious, and there's that we've come back in behind the lorry.
Right. We've
come back in behind the truck, and there's security there to recover. I cried every Sunday for the first year.
Oh, wow.
The first Sunday that I didn't cry, I came home and I was like, yes, healing, progress, you know, like, because it's painful to walk into a church that's everything you dreamed yours would be.
Right.
And it's not.
Right.
You know, like that's really tough. But at the same time, there's space to heal. There's support to heal. There's people to help you work through things. There's fellowship. There's so much beauty that has come out of all of it to me.
Right. What about, I mean, sorry, my phone's buzzing. I'm going to take it off. I don't know why I didn't always put it on the table. I'm just no pro like you guys and your setup there. So with that then, you know, I can hear this journey of healing, which you're obviously still on, and it's precious that you've let us in behind the scenes of it. So thank you. So has it changed your view of what a local church is? You know, you went to establish what local church, and I don't mean the community of believers, that kind of basics, but just the establishment of church, because you've just described these gifts, and you've just described what Ben's doing with his gifts, your new gifts that are coming out. Has it changed your view of, oh, you know what, maybe we put church in a smaller box and made it quite narrow?
I don't think so. I think maybe we just put ourselves in a smaller box. I think because growing up like in my walk with God, you know, we were in an environment where it wasn't said, and it wasn't true, but it felt like if you want to make an impact, plant a church. You know, especially the movement of churches. We were in the history, the DNA is a church planting environment, and so if you want to be like someone who makes an impact, if you want to be a big mover and shaker, which I do, you know, I've always been like I don't want to say ambitious, but like someone who wants to make a difference, wants to make an impact, and so it felt like that's just what we do. And so we never questioned that. And now, you know, I'm not saying we weren't meant to do that and it was wrong. It's just that was how we, you know, kind of grew up. And I think that it's, and the last thing I want to do, right, is put people on. I know it was sort of semi-joking saying don't do it.
No, but I like your point.
I think the big thing, like Beck said, is, you know, the word she uses, we came back in under Audacious, and that, and I think the massive learn for us is that if you are going to start a church, is make sure that there is just such an incredible strength above you, around you. And we had that, but we probably could have fought for more of that in terms of, like an oversight. And like I say, we had these things, and I don't, there's 0% in me that's like, oh, I wish other people had done more of this for me. I don't resent anybody else.
Yeah, great.
The only person I'm looking at is, on this journey that I feel, maybe should have done things different is myself, right? And so, but I think that you can, we have come back in under Audacious Church, but that doesn't mean that somebody else has to always stay in. They can always go out and start their own church, but if you do that, make sure that you do have that support network that is going to be, it's never going to be the same, but similar to that kind of, support network that you would have in the local church. But no, sorry I'll come back to your question because that didn't answer it at all. But no, I don't feel my view of it has changed. No, personally.
No, I think it's still just as important to us. And I think, like you said, you were surprised that we'd walk back into church on a Sunday, but where else would we go? Like, where else is there to go? Like, I think the difficult thing was remembering that through all of it, that Jesus had been with us the whole time and that he was still with us.
Right.
And
I think the hard, I mentioned to, I don't know if I mentioned it to you, but we were talking about the other day, like, the thing for me is like, because we had led the National Youth Network for our movement, and every year we'd have a youth conference, and I would always be like, we're gonna start churches, we're gonna impact this nation, because I love the UK and I wanted to, make a difference. I want my life to mean something, and it was always this message that we would kind of share and propagate. And so the idea of us stopping our church and quote unquote failing with our church was heartbreaking for me, because of course the here and now, but for also the kind of the thing that we've been talking about for so long. We wanted to blaze a trail. We wanted all these young people to look and see like, wow, that's amazing. If I give my life to God, I'm going to see the most exciting things, and he's going to use me in powerful ways. And there we are, like in this, depressing state, right? But I think coming out of it, going, still being in church and still serving, still being happily married and all that kind of stuff. I think God really kind of gave me peace about it when I was in that spot of like, God, what was all this about?
Right.
Why did this happen? We were again talking about the other day. There's things about this journey I don't understand. I'll never understand probably, but what I've learned about God is that he wants your obedience, and sometimes he'll give you some understanding, not always.
That's a great way of looking at it.
Well, like, he knows. I heard someone give the analogy once of like, it's like if your kid is about to run out in the road and you shout to them, stop, you don't want them turning around as they continue to run saying, but why?
Why?
You just want them to stop, and because it's about life and death, and we don't know, and we may never know, but the thing that's most important is obedience. And so we just felt we have to stay in the fold and stay committed to what we feel are our values, and I think that I'm hoping that is going to impact in the way that we had hoped, that we're going to blaze a trail and show people what can be done. I felt like God spoke to me shortly after we'd stopped and saying that this is actually going to help people, because if you can dream of this church, if you can dream of this journey, dream of making this impact, and it doesn't go the way you'd hoped, but your family's still healthy, you're still in church, you're still happy, all of that kind of stuff. Like, if that's my hope, is that people can look at us and think, like, if that's the worst that can happen, then I'm going to give everything for God.
Great.
Like, if the worst thing that could happen is I could do this for 4 years, it not go the way I want it to, and we have to close it all down, but I stay loving God, serving his house, enjoying life on the most part. If that's the worst that can happen, then let's give it a shot.
Amazing. And it is, and from looking out and looking in, that is your message. It's the message is you're light with it. I know it's painful. You're not light with the pain, but you're light with talking about it. You've got this fruit that is still very much evident in your life, of a fruit of the Spirit and fruit of what he's doing in your life already and through it. How's the church that you were pastoring? How are those? Have they got similar stories? Have you found that they've found new communities? Is there joy in that?
Yeah, I think, like Ben said, with the guy that he met, and they both kind of had an emotional 5 minutes, like processing what was going on. Like every conversation I had, it was like, because remember, we were mostly students, and so it was almost like the way I look back on it now, I think it was almost like God put us there for this really select number of people to walk them through a really important period in their life. So right. Uni, as we know, for young adults is such a huge thing, and especially for Christians, I think it can make or break your faith in a lot of ways. A lot of people go and they just kind of go, oh, actually I don't know what I believe anymore, and everything gets thrown into confusion. And I think we were blessed to be there to walk people through really significant and really some really tough stuff that people had experienced and were going through, and we were there. And we walked beside them, and we all went through it together. And so the conversations that I was having, like we said, people were just thankful and grateful. I'm so thankful that I had this community while I was at uni. I'm so thankful that you guys were here for me. I'm so thankful that, you guys kept me. I feel like the only reason I've stuck by my faith is because I had this community, and and so I think nothing is wasted, and that's the thing that God has spoken to me time and time again. And when everything fell apart, I called a friend in Australia who's like a real straight talker, and she knew what I needed to hear. And I'm going, but we've let the people down. She went, they were never yours. They were always God's. Like, who are you to decide that you get to play this significant role in how they turn out? Like, they belong to God. They don't belong to you. So let it go. Yeah. And I was like, oh, yeah, I think it's true.
I think that was definitely the most painful journey for me was the people, because so many of them were like really good friends before coming, and they sacrificed, they gave up so much and moved their lives, and a chunk of the prime of their lives, and all of this kind of stuff. So to then end it, and it not end how we'd all, because there were some of them that we would literally I remember sitting in our flat back in little old Eastbourne, many years ago, till like 2, 3, 4 in the morning, talking about, dreaming about what this would look like. And so to have these dreams, these collective dreams, kind of dissipate was, I feared for the relationships that we had, but by the grace of God, I think, there's been such a grace there, and still remain to be good friends. I still feel the hurt of letting them down, but I think the relationships are still strong, which is the main thing. So.
Yeah, and I'm sure from what you've said, they would never ever say to you, "You've let me down." From what you've described, these people are saying, "Hey, like, what you've done for us in this journey is incredible." What I like about what you've said, Beck, is what you've described, I think, is in lots of people's journeys, just maybe not as obvious as a church plant and them leading it. So as you're describing, I'm like, I have my own journey. I was part of a church plant, but me and my wife often sit and with other friends who were doing certain things and say the question, what was that all about?
Yeah.
What does that mean? And the narrative we tell ourselves before we do stuff of it's going to be X, Y, and Z, God's going to do this. And then it turns out very different to and often hurtful, because the stuff that's gone with it, maybe it's people or situations. And then you're questioning, why did we spend, for me, it's like, what was all that journey about in York of us planting a church? What was it all about? And I can take all my good stuff and, pull good stuff, but then I'm still left with, but there's still some really weird, funky stuff that I do not know what to make of it. Yeah. Mine just wasn't as public as yours.
Well, mate, we met when you were in York. So if you hadn't gone to York, you never would have met me.
Oh, so there we go. There's another good one.
The only reason.
That was why.
But exactly. And so, but that you, because it was so public, and you guys, like you said, I love that analogy. You'd come out from behind the truck. And I think your permission giving today, which is people who are coming out around their drug and they got that headwind, that the conversation described with your friends saying, look, you can stop. It's like, I can feel the relief in that conversation. It's like, we can, Like, and we're not going to be struck down by God. And the opposite's happened, which is more flourishments come to your life and more peace. And the people you've pastored have gone on to do stuff. And I think heaven will. I said hell then. Heaven has. I mean heaven. Heaven's going to tell a great story. It's, you know, we all love the story of the bus driver who took Billy Graham to the crusade, and that's where he got saved, right? And it's like, oh. But that's the reality, is it? And then you see Billy Graham and what he's gone and done. But thank God for the people behind the scenes. I think it was a bus driver or someone who took him to a crusade for him to find Jesus. And we don't know, and you guys do not know the seeds that we sown. And we have to believe and not just make some fairy tale language around it. It's not fairy tale, it's biblical, which is we sow and another waters and another reaps. And you guys have sown and you've watered and you've sown and you've watered, and someone's going to reap amazing things off the back of it. And I don't think, I look back at my time in helping plant a church in York, and I look and I say, it's amazing the seeds we've sown and helped water, and I'm trusting and believing that God does the harvest. And I can pull some great stories so that I can feel great, but I have to rely and go, one waters, one sows, one waters, and then another person gets to harvest it, and God brings the growth with it. And I think with your story, the church is a better place because you planted. The church is a better place because you've not gone bitter and twisted in your spirit. The church is a better place because you're working through some stuff. Manchester is a better place because you stepped out. And I'm excited for your future. Can I ask a raw question, which is, do you think you'd ever step outside again at some point in the future from that lorry? No.
I'm not even joking. Genuinely, I think, and part of that was maybe the helped me kind of process and understand it a little bit. Was, you know, we are all in with Audacious. Like, we're fully behind the vision. We love Glyn and Soph. We love the vision, the heart, and you know, I think if 10 years ago, I never could have imagined us doing what we're doing now, because I always had it in me that I had to do my thing, you know, and not in a, I don't think in a wrong way, just in a kind of pioneering yada yada. But I said to Stuart, actually, when we first started sort of walking through it, I said, maybe, you know, part of God's plan in all of this is that for Audacious to do what it's called to do, which is undoubtedly to change the world, what's going to be needed is a whole bunch of people, like not just me, but a whole army of people that could lead a church, that have the skills or the debatable, but have the you know, potential different characteristics, etc., but have zero desire to be the number one. And that's where I think another thing I was going to say is that I think in this generation we just have to be so careful. Like, the idea of going out and starting your own thing, I think especially for like a young adult demographic, can be so enticing, because we live in a world of influencers, of celebrity, of fame, of you know, people. My pet peeve: people quoting them, reposting on their Instagram stories when they've been tagged "Great preach" at, you know, whoever, and then they're like just constant blast of and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, because people love that, right? It's like, oh, I'm on the stage, I'm somebody, I've got and I get that comes out of that deep desire to be an impactful person. That's what we all have, but it can be what's the word? It can be, I don't know, it can come out in a wrong motive and you want to do your own thing. But I think the right way to go about it is to be open to, I wish I'd been maybe more open to start a campus of a church, or to come out underneath someone a bit more, rather than completely going out and doing our own thing. And so that would just be the word of warning I would give. No matter how much you feel like you want the control and you want to be able to set the culture, set the tone completely, I get that, but there's times and seasons, and don't discount the idea of actually coming out with support over you, because there's you know, there's a lot of benefit in that. So yeah, I think that I said, you know, in order for us all to do what we're collectively called to do as a church, maybe it needs a whole bunch of people that could do that, but have the desire to be the number one completely beaten out of them. Because I think that, as a church grows and there's people that grow in stature, I think there's maybe the temptation, if they are an associate pastor or a youth pastor, there's the idea that, like, man, I'm leading a big ministry here. I could go out and do my own thing and have my own name and my own thing. And, again, they step out and they don't realize how much, like, I would not want to do what Glyn is doing. Right now, I'm so glad he is who he is. And I am not doing that because, I just imagine the pressure, the weight, it's just insane, right? And so what we get to do is realize that we don't need the fame or the acclaim. Like, I've got zero desire to go out on the preaching circuit. I've got zero desire to be tagged on Instagram. Honestly, I've had that, and I probably as a younger leader, I did have those things, but they've been like beaten out of me. And my hope is that in that pruning and that weeding and that painful journey, actually God is in that fire. God is refining something that can be used to build something great, because there's no desire in me to ever do that again.
But what I love is what Beck said earlier, which is, but that desire, as much as you've painted a picture of it being all can be used for bad, God's put it into a place for good, which is you have built your own business. Beck's got, which is, you are number one. I presume you're not, you're the number one in this business and it's yours. And so you do get, in all of that desire, there was something good and it's found its fit. And now you're able to outwork it. And I'm totally with you. I love how you describe it. I think I just want to thank you guys. I want to thank you and say, well done. Thank you for working through tough moments and tough weeks and tough days where you've done what the Bible says, which is guard your heart, because it's the wellspring of life. And you can hear talking to you, which is you've had to fight to guard the heart of not turning so inward on yourselves and beating yourselves up so much, and realizing that for a healthy family and for God to do what he's going to do with you and what he's going to do in this nation, it requires you to just take those small moments, be it holding hands in bed or chatting all the way to a wedding or inviting counsel in from family or friends. All these little moments you've just described, they're the things that result in the fruit that you're now sat in, not some big prophecy at a conference or someone coming and bailing out and some super leaders coming in and taking the church. And do you know what I mean? You've just worked through it. And I want to say thank you for doing that. Thank you for sticking the course. Well done for just, you should be celebrating, which is God did something. We don't know what it is. Heaven's going to tell that story. He's done a massive work in us. We can pull lots of good from it. And we know that I'm presuming you're saying we know the future's amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
So huge thank you, guys. Thank you for bearing your soul and heart today. And I know that whoever listens to this is going to help and impact them. And if people do want to reach out and connect with you, how do they do that?
Tag me on Instagram saying how amazing I am, and I'll share the thing. I'm at Ben Donovan on Instagram. She's at Beck Donovan. BEC.
People often confuse us.
Beck and Ben, it's even.
People comment on my post thinking it's him.
Yeah.
Oh, great mate, so great mate. I'm like, it's me.
It's Beck. But we know you're the brains behind it as well, Beck. So
she's the brains, the creativity, the structure, the sanity. Yeah. Well
done, guys. And I'm so privileged to be able to listen into it. And I don't think it's a failure. I think it's a total God setup for what he's doing in the nation. And it's a God setup stuff. You've just had to go through some really painful stuff. And I know that others are going through painful stuff now, and be it a church plant, or be it a breakdown of a church, or be it a difficult situation in their family life, it all has parallels. And I think how you've navigated it is such huge encouragement. So big thank you. Go check them out. Beck and Ben Donovan, thanks for being with us.
Wow. Thank you, Ben and Beck. What an insightful look. And I really hope that anyone listening or watching this, you got a lot from it and it has encouraged you. Reach out to them. Get hold of them. They gave their Instagram handles at the end there, so you could at least encourage them if it's encouraged you. I was hugely grateful, and I hope you're enjoying these. There's more to come. I love doing them, and so have a great week.